Welcome to the Customer Success from the Ground Up podcast with me, Mike Marshall, Customer Success Leader.
And me, Deborah Knight, founder of CS consultancy Captive.
Each episode we interview people that have set up customer success from the ground up at their companies.
And we try and have a lot of fun in the process.
We hope you enjoy the next episode.
Perfect.
Welcome. Hello, Jamie. Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Hi.
Lovely to see you all on this wet afternoon in the UK. But we have a ray of sunshine with us today from the west coast of America in our guest today, Jamie, who I'll let introduce herself in a moment. Great to record another episode of the Customer Success from the Ground Up podcast. This is our 6th episode, I think, Deborah. We've been doing it a little while now, so very exciting, and we've got lots of guests coming on the podcast in the next few weeks. Very excited to talk with our guest today. So, quickly introduce myself, Mike Marshall, Customer Success Leader, and I'll let my wonderful co-host Deborah introduce herself.
Hi, Deborah Knight, founder of Captive, which is a customer success consulting and coaching business.
Nice. And I'd love to hand over to you, Jamie, to introduce yourself to our audience today and give a bit of background to you, and then we'll crack on, if that's all right.
Sure. My name is Jamie Levy. I'm based in Los Angeles. I am that ray of sunshine that Mike mentioned earlier. And I'm a customer experience leader. I've built programs at a number of different companies, including Shopify, Simpro Group, and Magento before the Adobe acquisition. I think of myself a little bit as like a retention whisperer. And I recently have become sort of an accidental consultant. I've gone out on my own and I'm working with a number of different companies of varying stages, just on building out some of their customer programs, journeys, and onboarding paths.
Nice. Awesome. Jamie was just telling us that about her kids being able to go to the beach after school, and we were all just saying we were quite jealous of that. So I think it must be a very nice thing to be able to do. So I'm going to be going into my room through the rain to see my kids in the moment, watch telly in the cold. So, but very cool to have you on, Jamie. And Jamie and me met through a mutual contact in the CS world from her previous company. So cool. All right, well, let's crack on. So we always start with an interesting section we call Well That Escalated Fast. There is a Ron Burgundy reference there, which is intentional. Obviously, with all CSMs, have things like customer escalations, have sometimes some interesting things that happen as part of our jobs, and they ended up being sort of folklore at your company. But we do have the benefit of the Reddit forum, Our Customer Success, and found a good one today. So I'm going to read it out, and then, as always, I'd like to sort of give some thoughts on it, because I think it's quite an interesting one today. Normally we've got a quite funny sort of tagline, I suppose, usernames in Reddit. This isn't a bad one. Late Development 543, whatever that means. Thank you, Late Development 543. So I quite like this one. So we stopped running QBRs and our renewals went up. I love that they tried that and it worked.
Love this so much.
I saw it. I was like, "Oh, that's a good one." So it's quite a long post, but I'll sort of paraphrase it a little bit. Basically, we ran QBRs for years like it was gospel. Big quarterly meeting with customer exec sponsor, agenda built 2 weeks ahead, 6 to 8 hours prep per QBR, standard sort of stuff. Doing it for 40 accounts, it's a lot of time spent. 2 things kept nagging: that customers would reschedule the QBRs a lot. A third had got moved or got cut short, etc. Execs were supposed to turn up, they didn't. They sent like a person in their place. It does happen a lot as well. And the renewal rate wasn't correlating with the QBR quality. So the QBRs ostensibly were supposed to be great, but it wasn't correlating with an improvement in renewal rate, interestingly enough. So we stopped scheduling QBRs for Q3 last year, replaced them with 2 things: a bi-weekly 15-minute asynchronous health update, and on-demand exec syncs the customer could request. And result, 0 customers complained, 2 asked for an exec sync, both renewed and expanded, and our renewal rate went from 87% to 91%. So very interesting. Hard learnings that strategic QBRs were mostly status updates the customer didn't want and we didn't need. So, interesting one. Jamie, love to get your initial thoughts on that one. I quite like it, but what are your thoughts?
Many. I think the QBR should be outlawed, to be totally honest with you. Like, I've never referred to them as QBRs. I say EBRs, executive business reviews, and they should be sort of on demand. A lot of companies, I think, default to scheduling QBRs and committing to them during initial customer onboarding. And it sort of like sets the tone, and they're not important to the customers. I mean, if a CSM is taking 6 to 8 hours to prepare a single QBR for one of 40 customers, I think they just said, like, think about all the other ways that time could be spent. Even if it's just doing like some regular due diligence on the company without having to take their time as well. I love the idea of asynchronous updates. But really asking customers throughout their relationship with the company, how do they want those updates? Are they interested? There are some companies that are like, yes, I want to check that QBR box. We want to do that. But I would bet my entire career that of a portfolio of 40 customers, not all 40 are going to want that. And after a customer, even if you start with that being as the baseline, which I would not recommend, of committing to QBRs from the jump, if they don't show up to one, like, that's a conversation, and that's actually a great conversation to have. Like, how do you want us to communicate with you? I think the recurring syncs in theory are a good idea, but I also think that you start to, it's an obligation instead of an on-demand connection point. And, with today's technology, I think that there are a lot of customers that demand individual Slack channels. I mean, there's so many different ways to get in touch, and you have to be thoughtful about the way that you are communicating your updates and the value of the product and what they are getting out of it. And so I think it's a delicate balance, but I think that QBR should be outlawed.
Nice, I like that. QBR should be outlawed with the clip title of I think this potentially. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think when things are difficult, when there's a lot of retention challenges, etc., I think people do sort of get down to the detail more. Let's do more QBRs. Let's increase work, increase effort. Let's increase cadence, right? It'd be interesting for an organisation to be like, actually, you know what? We're going to take 10 CSMs, and we're not going to do them for 2 quarters, and like almost like an A/B test the result. I think that'd be interesting. Deb, what are your thoughts?
Well, I feel like I ought to be saying long live the QBR now, just so we can have a bit of a debate about
Contrarian.
Share your opinion. Yeah,
but I'm totally in Jamie's camp. I think that we have evolved as a function in terms of what we're there to deliver, and I think that there's a lot of coverage about QBR is dead and things like that, but people can get access to the data in platform now. They can pull insights as and when they need it. If your clients are not doing that, they're not engaged. So you've got to start before the QBR, because the QBR is only going to show you that they're not engaged and haven't been engaged for the last quarter. So, it's a reflective thing. So we talk about sort of goal setting, and we talk a lot about success plans. So I think that, how we are engaging and collaborating with customers is changing a lot. And I think what's really pertinent about that chat is actually what they're currently doing is reviewing how they're engaging with customers, testing new ways, testing what's working, and what works for one company and that set of customers, and even maybe a segment of customers will be different. And I think that's our job, is to stay creative and stay kind of flexible on, just because traditionally QBRs have worked doesn't mean they will continue to work. And I think we just have to stay ahead and test new things.
Yeah, I think
Also, I mean, asking the customers how they want to be communicated with. It's not going to all be the same. You can't just slap. I also think the word playbook should be outlawed. Or maybe these are just dirty words, QBR and playbook, because you can't just slap something, across an entire portfolio of customers. But leaving it open so that you are flexible and can tailor based on the customers, and within, depending on the size of your company and the companies that you're working with, there might be different personas within the customer that need, unique tailored options. Like one person might want a QBR and they might want completely different data than, what a traditional executive might want. And
I think
so,
we rely way too heavily on the QBR bringing in those wider stakeholders. And all too often, those are the people that don't show up to the QBR because they didn't know why they were invited to it in the first place. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, there's different ways to engage those people, whether it's through a customer board, whether it's through a one-on-one conversation, whether it's actually through furnishing your direct client with the information in the right format to pass that on, as so I think there's definitely different ways, and I think we have had an over-reliance on QBRs which isn't going to cut it in the future world.
I agree, and I think like actually like an exec not turning up to the QBR when they're supposed to is like tells you all you need to know, doesn't it? Really, like how important you are. Like they're like I didn't feel it was worth my time, right? Otherwise, I would have been there. So,
but also like what's in the agenda,
well,
I think
exactly.
that there are some executives that follow the no agenda, no attenda,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, it's true.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
train of thought. But a long time ago, I worked with somebody who in every single meeting invite, she would write the sentence, "This meeting will be successful if," and then whatever the objective of the meeting was. And I mean, it's something that's so simple, but at the end of the day, it's like, why you're going to that meeting. And if it's just so that you can defend that that company continues to use your software, I mean, if you're honest about it, I guess that's an interesting A/B test to put in that invite. But just being like blatantly honest, and being clear about what the intent is, I think is an interesting approach also.
Yeah, no, I think that was a good one from Reddit. I like that one. That was very interesting. Cool. Well, good to get everyone's opinion on that. I think it was very interesting. So I think let's crack on and sort of to the interview portion of our customer success from the ground up podcast. So I think I'm going to hand over to, as always, to the wonderful interviewer Deborah, and I'm sure she's got an interesting icebreaker for you. That's normally how we start, and I'll hand over to you, Deborah, to go through that.
Yeah, we've got into trouble with these icebreakers sometimes, so I try to give you a bit of a heads up on it so that we don't say anything too detrimental. So I'd love to learn from you, Jamie. I'll share a little secret. So I was watching Kylie Minogue's Netflix video the other day, and she was like saying how rustling paper really, really annoys her. And at the same time, I was like, do you know what? When I go to the freezer and get ice from a supermarket bag of ice and it's all stuck together, it makes me far more angry than it should. So I was wondering whether you could share with us something that irritates you or annoys you way more than it really should. And yeah, have you got something you'd like to share?
How much time do you have? I mean, right now it's my dog's barking while I'm trying to record a podcast. There are so many that we could do an entire podcast on it. There really are a lot. And I was thinking about it this morning. What initially comes to mind, like immediately, is when people are eating and they let their fork scrape against their teeth.
Yeah,
I
I think
hate
that's
that. My husband
justifiable.
says I have
I think
misophonia.
I think that's a justifiable
Yeah,
irritation, though. I think you need to
creeps me
come
out a
up with
bit just
something
thinking
that's
about it.
just
Uh,
not justifiable.
Yeah, I also hate personalized license plates. I don't know if that's a thing in the UK,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, get a hobby.
Could you now give us a little insight into your career, which is perhaps more relevant to the podcast? But how have you arrived into customer success, and what do you love about customer success?
I arrived sort of by accident into customer success. After I moved to Los Angeles, I was working in the logistics industry and I ended up getting married. I had a baby. I was on maternity leave and I realized that I was not excited to go back to work. And I really didn't love my job. And there was a woman who I had been connected with for a while who was so annoying on Facebook about how much she loved her job. And I had like a little bit of postpartum depression, a little bit of jealousy. I asked her if she would grab coffee with me. So we did, and she was just raving about customer success and how much she loved her job, and she got to travel and talk to all these different peoples and companies and learn about all these different organizations. And I was like, well, I'm kind of done with talking to truck drivers. Like, how do I get in? And it turned out that her boss at the time I had worked with back when I lived in Chicago, like 10 or 15 years prior, he used to manage the Campbell Soup account, and I used to run a lot of their lanes with the truck drivers across the United States. And so she put me in touch with him. We reconnected. He hired me as a CSM and then promptly quit on my first day. But like on day 2, I got 350 accounts transferred into my name in Salesforce. I did not know the product. I did not know the customers. I couldn't even tell you what e-commerce was. This was an e-commerce company. But I think that that was the best way to learn. It's sort of like sink or swim. And I always say that, you know, it wasn't my 4-year degree that really equipped me to be in customer success. It's just, you know, like raging curiosity and my back, like I was a bartender in college, and learning how to ask questions and sort of like understand people that way, I think was absolutely the best preparation that I had.
Yeah, it's interesting because I worked at a startup previously, and we were going into new markets, and the salaries for experienced customer success managers in that market were very high and not within our budget. Our CEO Stephanie said, just go to a load of bars and hire some of the hospitality people because they've got brilliant transferable skills. And I think that is so true. In my background, I worked as a student in hospitality venues and things, and I think that there is that people connection skill that you have in hospitality. It's such a transferable element of what we need in customer success, isn't it? Have you had success in taking people from hospitality and making them the next CSM?
I mean, I always say I like to hire athletes, you know, people that can play a lot of different positions. Like if you are just into renewals, like it's probably not going to be a good fit. And as we know, customer success means something different at every single company. And so you need to wear a lot of hats. But I think, you know, the number one trait that someone has to have is just being curious and being able to talk to different people. Like if you, I know you didn't ask me about mastermind, but if you ask me what my superpower is, it's actually like running toward the unhappy customers. Like I love that challenge. And I had a boss once who was like, you love to run toward the fire. And I think you cannot be scared of the uncomfortable conversations and the inconvenient truth that like some customers are going to want to leave. Churn is a fact of life. And some of the best conversations that you can have are with those customers who are leaving. Not in an attempt to get them to stay, but to really understand like the ethos and the decision behind it so that you can be more proactive next time with a customer that, you know, looks similarly.
And I think completely agree. And I also think like if they are, you know, if they're not, they're just quite upset that something's gone wrong, they're escalating for whatever reason, product or whatever it is. I feel like I used to like those too because I thought like if I can turn this around and make it work for them, like it builds a lot of trust. You know, you're not only there when things are good and great and like there's lots of value and everything's awesome. It's like they know you're there when it's difficult and you're like championing them and you're communicating and you're getting the product team to change something on their behalf or whatever it is. That engenders a lot of trust. I think, and then like you know that helps. I think down the line. So sometimes it's when it's wrong and your feet are to the fire that you can make a difference.
Yeah, I think I lost my train of thought when you were asking me sort of like about my journey. Like that was how I entered into customer success. I went on to Shopify where I sat across from the GM who was like, we know we need you, but we don't know why. And if you ask me, you know, to like rattle off why I'm good in customer success, like I always go back to this meeting. His name was Lauren Paddleford. Shout out to Lauren. And he sort of was like, you tell me why we need you. And so we started having all these hypothetical conversations about the customers, and it was Shopify Plus at the time. This was 2017. They were starting to move up market and didn't really know how to work with these customers, or thought that they didn't know how to work with these customers. And part of it was just being there. And so I created a team. We built out a team called Embassy that was like the Amex Black Card for the biggest brands that were using Shopify Plus. And part of it was just being in the office with them. So I divided my time between LA and New York. And I would literally, I had a desk in two of the companies here. I'm not going to name them. But I literally had a physical desk in these companies' offices. When I was in town, I would spend time there. I would go to their meetings. I was, with a white flag, like I'm just here to help. I'm here to represent Shopify Plus, but also, like connect you to the right teams within Shopify. And so I realized how much you can gauge just from being in an office and seeing how different people respond when someone walks into a room, and like their body language changes. And so like, do I want that person in the room next time? Do we want to bring them in? And I started to realize really quickly that customers want to talk to other customers, whether they be the largest customers, whether they be smaller customers of all sizes. And at the time, Shopify was like, we're not building an advisory board. Like, we do not build for individual customers. And as such, like a traditional advisory board wasn't going to work for us. And so I had to sort of like be creative with what I was going to do with that information, but also knowing and hearing directly from the customers that they wanted to hear from each other. And so I created, sort of by accident, something I called it Unboxed, because in the wild world of SaaS, there's no traditional unboxing. And so I pitched to leadership at Shopify at the time, 2.5 days of sort of like a look under the hood. Who is Shopify? How do we make the decisions we do? Why do we make the decisions we do? Who's actually making those decisions? And how are they thinking about the customers, all while exposing, that what's under the hood to the customers so that they could do the same. And it ended up being a massive success. The customers loved it. Our teams loved it. The PMs, the people actually building the products, could then sort of like tap into like a little mic on this shoulder and a Deb on this shoulder as they're prioritizing certain product features and think like the customer. Richard Branson is like well known for keeping an empty chair around the table in any meeting to represent the customer. And I like literally keep a hat. It rotates next to my desk, and it's like my customer hat. And so like I literally have to think as the customer for any program, for anything that I'm trying to design, like put the customer at the center of it. The QBR at the beginning of this conversation is such a good example of that, because like, who's the QBR about? Are you just puffing out your chest talking about like how great your product is for this company and what's important to them? And so this program became 2.5 days of a look under the hood, but also like an opportunity for customers to hear from each other, and me selfishly to hear the questions that our customers had for each other, because that's what I really want to know.
You said a few things in there I think are really interesting, and I want to come back to, if that's okay. One thing that I wanted to, it was really subtle, but you talked about how being in the room with your team or with your customers, and you can actually pick up and shift, like if a certain person is there, if there's a difference. I think that also it can change during the course. Things can shift during the course of a meeting as well, and I think that sometimes you don't pick that up when you're on a video call. And how do you train that type of subtlety, that type of observation into your wider team, so that, because I do think that we used to, it's something that evolves with time, or it's a certain skill, but how do you train it and how do you coach them on it?
I try to always say less, which is ironic because I think I just like went on a soliloquy for a couple minutes and just like rambled on. But you can learn so much just by not talking, and not trying to fill the space, which I think is um, uh, it's sort of a default in customer success, and so being less defensive about like why you're on that call or why you're present or why you're communicating with them. It's like, again, going back to the QBR, and it's sort of being like defensive. Like, what if instead of a QBR you scheduled a 15-minute or 30-minute call and you were like, what are the biggest priorities for your company right now? And then you stop talking. And you might want to pepper some things in, like just to lubricate the conversation. Like, what I've heard from some of my other customers is this, or, I just got off of a really interesting call and they said that they've changed their North Star, which like I hadn't heard before. Have you done that at your company? Or, are you setting goals for 3 months from now, for 6 months from now? And different companies have different, roadmaps and planning sessions. And I'm always shocked at the companies that don't actually have a North Star or don't have set goals and sort of just have like a smorgasbord of like things that they would like to do. And so I think being able to ask questions and then shut up, that's how I would train someone, but also like just be curious, but not afraid to share.
So, Jamie, you mentioned previously about putting on the hat to really bring the idea of the customer into the room, and I think that often we don't think about the customer enough as an organisation. I think we intend to, and then we forget to. How do you ensure that the organisation is wearing that hat sometimes, and not just you?
Reminding, like, you have to talk about it. And I think a lot of companies get lost in their ICP or in their profiles, and really wanting to refine a persona. And at the end of the day, it's like these are humans and they're evolving, and what they want today might be different than tomorrow. And so without waiting to get it perfect, like, you just have to look at the human element. And sometimes just having like the physical representation. It's why, Richard Branson I think it was Richard Branson, having the empty chair is so, it's so important because it's something physical. And so a lot of times companies will talk about the customer, but they're not thinking about the customer. They're thinking about their projection of what the customer wants.
And I think a lot of the time as well, we're thinking about what the customer is doing and what the customer needs and what the customer wants. But I feel like we miss the emotional journey that customers go on as well. You talked earlier about really focusing on onboarding, and I do think onboarding is one of those roller coasters for customers emotionally, where they're really excited and then they get overwhelmed, and then they kind of get stressed, and then they come back to being excited again. How do you get your teams to relate to the customer in those moments?
I mean, again, I think that it's like putting on the hat and understanding and asking more questions. Like, being quiet is one of the most powerful things that a CSM can do, and getting into, their head. But it's easy to say we're channeling our customers, but within the customer, there are different roles and different.
He's back.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry about that.
There are different roles that have different needs at different points of the relationship. And so like during onboarding, like your primary contact might be one person, but leaving the door open to be like, should anyone else be in this conversation? Is there anyone else that, I might want to connect with? And you can be cheeky about it, especially when it comes time to talking about renewals. If that's not an ongoing part of the conversation, like, who else do I need to woo, with my humor? Or I want to understand holistically more about the organization. Is there anyone else that should have my contact information? And so I think that broadening across just a primary contact is really, really important.
And I think we've touched on it before in this conversation as well, but it's that confidence, isn't it? It's the confidence to leave a space for somebody to answer and to not fill. And I think that you were talking to me earlier about the idea of the alter ego, in order to try and encourage like stepping out of your comfort zone. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, it's a book that I think is really important for a lot of people. I often suggest CSMs.
I love the props, by the way. You've got the hat, you've
Yeah, I
got
love
the
that.
bag,
You
I'm loving this.
the hand.
I have everybody makes fun of my like color coded
Very nice.
Look at that.
bookshelf. The concept of the alter ego is that like sports players, athletes, you know, sometimes have an alter ego that they'll channel when they go on the court or on the field. Beyonce like has Sasha Fierce when she goes on stage. And so being able to channel, you know, your alter ego, and maybe that is when you're speaking to customers and it's just, you know, an armor that you almost put on so that you can project that confidence. And so, you know, being a presence and being able to sort of like have that shield where maybe you're just exuding confidence that you don't really have in your day-to-day life. But sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, that really rings true actually that you when you say that, because when I was a CSM, when I used to have like a kickoff, I always used to think, oh, I've got everyone in the room right now, like they're all here, and I thought I used to sort of like really turn on my sort of assertive side. Like, it's not really, I'm not saying I'm not assertive, but like I was over the top sort of controlling, basically, like, because I thought if I'm a customer in the room, I've just spent a lot of money on this product, like I want to know the person running it like has got their shit together, like they know what's going on, they're controlling everything,
Yeah.
and like. And so I used to sort of go like super direct, assertive, control, and like I'm much more relaxed than that. I think as a normal thing, but that was certainly kickoff. That was like my alter ego for sure, and I felt more confident probably being that way. And I think everyone in the room, I hope, felt when they left those of like a person is in control. You know, they're not kind of like scared of making us successful. You know, so.
So, we've talked a lot about some of these soft things around what you can do to become the retention whisperer, but how do you sort of tie it all together? What would you say is your kind of mini formula if you were to package it up?
Honestly, don't think that it's a formula. I think that it's sort of like the curiosity and confidence and asking the questions, like how are you defining success for a customer relationship? And how is your customer defining success with the product or the service that you're offering? I think, you know, I've never been formulaic, I don't think, in my entire career. And so being able to, I'm almost like allergic to playbooks and formulas, and just asking questions and looking at what stage a company is in. And I'm not talking about, you know, are they Series A, are they Series B? But how mature are they? It's really easy to default to, I don't want to just use the generalization of like metrics or a maturity model for customers or companies, but it's who is your customer? What is it that they want? And what do you want to get to? You know, what are realistic goals?
What I've picked up from you in our short chat today is like it's not about repeating something that's worked before necessarily, and it's about finding what's going to work now. I loved your example of it's not actually we're not going to do an advisory board because that's not right for us and we can't deliver that and it's not right for our customers, but you talked about doing the under the hood initiative instead, and I think that that really is what we are all trying to do, and that's why AI, we touched on it just now, isn't actually going to take away customer success, because actually AI relies on what's been done before, whereas what we're trying to do is do new and do different.
100%. You need to collect the inputs to even like figure out what's right for that particular customer. And AI is never going to be able to do that. And so, it's the observing, the body language in the room or on the call when someone else joins the call, or, you say something that clearly hits a nerve. AI is never going to be able to represent that. And so, it's never going to be able to replicate that. And so, if I had to give, a word of advice to people in customer success, it's to like retain the curiosity, ask the questions, even if you don't know what it is that you're looking for. It's almost better if you don't know, because sometimes the follow-up question from the customer to like clarify will help you get there even faster than if you just ask directly.
Well, I think it's been a fantastic conversation in the psychology of customers and how we're bringing that in, and also the psychology of our teams. I think we've talked a little bit about that around alter egos and confidence and everything. So it's been a really interesting, insightful conversation, Jamie. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
I really was really looking forward to this one. It's been really interesting, and so thank you for your time. And thank you for being on the Customer Success from the Ground Up podcast. It's been great, and we'll speak soon.
Anytime. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Customer Success from the Ground Up podcast with me, Mike Marshall.
And me, Deborah Knight. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like and follow, and we'll see you on the next one.